O hero of rebirth, transversing, soar you the azure skies. Upon your breast a crimson crest, shine light down from on high. O hero of rebirth transcending, weave you an azure lie. By your deeds doth crimson bleed, and darkness quench the fire. That was the quote from this year's Rising event, and it's as cryptic as always. Welcome back everyone, and today we're going to be looking a little bit closer at the 4.4 trailer, Preludes in Violet. I watched it over and over until I was almost sick of it, and I feel like I'm finally ready to sit down and talk about what I think is going to be coming for us in this possible future predictions video. Now, my thoughts on the trailer? I got the impression that this trailer had a large number of red herrings and misleading directions, and I'll get to them all in a moment. But first off, I noticed that the trailers do seem to be getting shorter and shorter each time they come out. Whereas before that they could go from 8 to 10 minutes easy, here this one wasn't even 4 minutes long. Now, what this does is it makes it feel more like a movie trailer, which keeps a lot of the mystery so that we're more excited about it, but it's also maddening because we aren't sure what we're looking at. Otherwise, I thought that it was done amazingly well. The music and the effects and the environments were beautiful and with a lot of detail. But what I loved the most was the feeling of the dark forebodingness for the characters. You could just tell that something big is on the horizon, and the suspense is killing me here. Well, we all need to start off somewhere, so we'll just start off with the very beginning here. Now this scene here is the first thing that pops up just before the title sequence, and at first I thought that this was the burn. But no, it looks much more like the part where we're fighting against the dragon in this scene. And I'll talk about more who I think about the dragon is when we reach that point, but by comparing the two areas, I have to say that they are the same place. And it's not going to be part of the main scenario questline. It looks more along the lines of Omega and one of the battles that we have to fight against. Here's the title scene. I think that's self-explanatory. But here, this is the scene of one of the confirmed bosses that we will be facing for Omega. Now for the Alphascape, I guess that we should have been expecting creatures from the first Final Fantasy game. Here, it's Chaos, and I have to love his design here. He looks amazing. He looks far more badass, like far more intimidating than he did in Dissidia. Whereas in that game, he looked a little bit more like Kefka, with all the bright colors. Here, he looks more like a demon from hell. He's going to be amazing to fight. And to be honest though, I doubt that he's going to be our final boss. And you know it's going to be big if even Chaos, the original first bad boss of Final Fantasy, is going to just end up being the first boss that we fight for Alphascape. Meanwhile, we hear a narrator speaking over with these words. That way, sorrow. Ahead looms light, expunging all form and life. With all the music and the sound effects in the background, it was very difficult to pick up on the voices and exactly what it was saying, but I think that I got it right. Next scene, we're going to be taking place in Alamigo, no surprise, since Square Enix did inform us that 4.3 would be the ending of the Doman storyline. But what I love here is that we are having a meeting with all the leaders of all the nations that we can visit. Didn't expect that, to be honest. A full meeting with all the leaders of all these nations together at once. I knew it was going to come someday, I just didn't think it was going to be this soon. And it looks like Alamigo and Doma have officially joined the Eorzean Alliance, though now that Doma is part of the Alliance, they might want to consider changing the name. The Doma Alliance? The Domasian Alliance? Yeah, we'll come up with the name later. But we do hear bits of conversation from here as well, such as from Hien and Kane Sena. And we, for our part, are glad indeed to be able to welcome friends both old and new. Pray accept my heartfelt thanks for your generous invitation. Anyway, that's just basically letting them know, like, this is a big meeting, it's going to be a really big event, it's important to a lot of people, so they're just sitting down and about to have a nice long discussion once the formalities are out of the way. And another thing I noticed is that Thancred is back from his little trip venturing into the Garlean lands, and so I'm sure he's going to have some interesting information for us. And he really does. Talk is rife that Doma has summoned a primal, and the Empire's more liberal voices are being drowned out in the fearful clamor for retribution. And then somebody else, I personally think that's Gestola, than it is as we feared. So yeah, it looks like we are facing the backlash for Yotsuyu summoning a primal, or rather becoming a primal. Somehow word has already reached back to Garlemald about what happened, and we could end up facing like some serious consequences because of it. This next scene here, we have Yugiri examining a body, which is definitely Imperial, which you can tell from the uniform. And we're in the burn, basically. From the looks of things, they came across the remains of the battle that Alphinaud took part in before he joined forces with the Shadowhunter. And from the looks of things, they're starting to put everything together of what happened. Now, at this point in the game, before 4.4 comes out, they aren't aware that the ship that Alphinaud had been on had crashed. And they weren't aware that they were attacked by Imperials. So they either somehow learned about the attack and followed after him, or they tried tracing his path and they just came across the remains by accident. Either way, they're definitely trying to make their way through the burn. The Warrior of Light, Yugiri, and Hien are all on the backs of their Yol, and then we have a pair of eagles behind them, which are holding Alize and Y'shtola, as they try to fight their way through a sandstorm. Now this reminds me of when the Warrior of Light and Estidian were trying to fight their way through some pretty rough weather when they were trying to get to the Eyrie to face Nidhogg. On their way there, they ended up in the nasty weather and they were forced to land, and we have to make our way to like the remains of the airship on foot. And this seems to be confirmed because we see ourselves landing, we're making our way through the burn, avoiding falling rocks like from Zephotol and the vicious creatures that live here. It looks to me that this crystallized scorpion is probably going to be the first of the 3 bosses that we face. And I can't help but look at this giant skeleton lying here in the sands. On the world map, it does show how a large worm is in the burn, and this skeleton, it just reminds me of it. So I'm thinking that this dragon is going to be the second boss that we're up against, and the final boss might be whatever killed the worm? Or like maybe some sort of spawnling of the worm, I don't know. Next up, we move on to Alphinaud, and he's having this discussion with the Shadowhunter after they came across a camp that was destroyed. And I can't say for sure if this is the camp that the Shadowhunter was basically in charge of, like if it was his camp and these were his comrades, since they are dressed very differently from each other. But judging from the look on his face, I'm willing to bet that he at least knew who these people were. Nor can I tell if this was an Ascian-related death or an Empire one, but if I had to guess, it looks like some kind of poison to me. But it's safe to say that he and Alphinaud had at least made it out of the burn. And to be honest, it looks a lot like they made it to the Forelands, but I know it can't be there, because it's way on the other side of Eorzea. So I'm thinking that this is a part of a new area, like at the very tip of the iceberg of a new land inside Ishabard. Now I know that Square Enix has said before that they weren't fans of Garlemald because of all the metal and like pollution that they cause, but I don't really see that being a problem because I'm picturing a more futuristic city like Arcadia in Final Fantasy XII. And I can totally see like the Garleans being prepared to pollute and destroy lands that they conquered. Like they have no problems with like building like these metal fortresses and causing like all this devastation, but I can see that they also leave theirs relatively clean and nice because they have to live there. And if the Shadowhunter is who we think he is, I'm not saying it's Gaius, but it's totally Gaius, come on, let's face it. The point is, if he's sort of living in this area, I can also see him being able to recruit people to whatever his campaign is now. If this really is Gaius, and I'm totally saying that it's Gaius, he had no shortage of followers, and so he had a lot of charisma to bring people together over to his side of thinking, and I can totally see him bringing order to areas in conflict, whether they want it or not. Another thing that I noticed is that we seem to be missing Maxima. Maxima appears in the cover art for this patch, so we know he's going to be having an important role to play, and I can't see them killing him or Alphinaud off. But in this scene, we do hear somebody mentioning this line. The Populares no longer present an obstacle. Now is the time to bring the Empire's might to bear. And I'll get more on what I think that means in a moment. But moving on, we have this place where I am almost betting that it's Allagan. At first I thought that it was going to be part of Omega, but then I realized that we only have 4 players running through here, so this is a 4-man dungeon. And since the only 2 dungeons that we're supposed to have are the Burn and the Arbitorium, hard mode, I find it doubtful that we'll be seeing this place in the Arbitorium. And after doing a quick comparison, I'm willing to bet that these are the exact same players that we see running through the Burn from before. So I'm guessing that we somehow stumbled across this place by accident while we're looking around in the burn. And so I'm guessing that the burn is going to turn out to have some sort of Allagan secrets beneath its sands. You know, that might change a few things. It turns out that Allag had some kind of powerful weapon or even some primals sealed away underneath these lands. And when the Garleans came here, they discovered this place, they learned a great deal about magitech and technology, and that's how they advanced so fast in just about 50 odd years. However, in their process to learn and take all of this knowledge and power, they also accidentally ended up awakening these primals and unleashed them onto the burn, which sucked the land dry. That would be cool. This next scene here, we have the Domans releasing lanterns into the air, but I'm not going to be talking too much about that because it's definitely part of the Doman reconstruction, and not really part of the main scenario questline. But it does look like they seem to be celebrating how far that they've come, how far they have rebuilt, but they're also still mourning the past and looking back. But that's when things start to take a darker turn, such as with Kane Senna and Alize. Kane Senna mentions, "Reach out as I may, I could not sense in him the spark of life that is his soul." And then we have Alize, who is in Limsa, "To have the people I hold dear struck down before my eyes, and to be powerless to help them. That I cannot bear." Everything that I'm saying right now is just a brief summary and discussion of what we see in the trailer, and then I'm going to be getting to the predictions, so I'll be getting to what I think is happening here in a moment. I like this next scene here where we have Ijikai clothed in darkness and looked ready to strike down Cryo. Now I couldn't be sure, but it looks an awful lot like Zanetsuken, the blade that Odin wields. In Final Fantasy V, we do find out that Odin is located in a cave beneath the castle of Baal, which was ruled over by Galuf and his granddaughter Cryo. Now it seems to me that Ijikai finds the sword in this same place, but does that mean that it's really the same sword? From the looks of things, I'm willing to bet that we may have finally found a way to get past the barrier and into the headquarters of the students of Baldesion through a secret passageway underneath the barrier, and that's where we come across Ijikai. I'm thinking that while we make our way here, we come across the Masked Man once more, but Ijikai protects the Masked Man. But if it really is Zanzetsuken, does it mean that it's Odin who's controlling all this? That it's Odin who's the primal that was sealed up here? We do have Yurit's front where we get to battle Odin and we defeat him. The real primal turned out to be the sword. And after we defeated Odin, it was stolen by a member of the God's Quiver. So is it Odin? I suppose I could see it, but I find that the pieces aren't lining up nearly as nicely as I was hoping for. But it does look like we also get a closer look at the new place for Eureka, whereas before we had like this green, wild, lush, almost jungle-like forest, and then here in Pagos we have a frozen wasteland. Here it looks like we're underground, like we're going like through these cave systems, which would make sense because if we are trying to go underneath the barrier to get inside HQ, we'll have to try to make our way through like these underground maze of tunnels. And these creatures here look to be like two of the new notorious monsters that we're going to be up against. Love the designs, and the atmosphere makes it feel all the more creepy. We'll be talking about Suzaku next, and it looks like she's going to be a really cool fight. I love the fact that we got a little bit of her battle theme, and I can't wait to hear it when we actually get to fight her. It sounded amazing. And I know that a lot of people were making fun of her when we saw her in the letter of the producer, and instead of taking on a kind of half-beast, half-humanoid form, she was still a firebird, like in a kind of armored dress instead. And a lot of people were complaining that it looked like we were going to have the similar battle with Turn 12 and the Binyu ads, and I was kind of worried about that too, but at least until I hear this line. "Tenzin, Tenzin, it is I. Sheath your sword, I beg of you." Now, it doesn't look like we're going to be introduced to her before the battle like Byakuya was. It looks like she had already fallen to her Aramitama, so instead of willingly allowing it to surface so that we could battle her in a somewhat controlled environment, she seems that she's already been overwhelmed by it and we just have to jump in now with no warning or help. But her madness is that she doesn't see us. Instead, she now sees Tenzin, a friend who is now trying to kill her, and she's lashing out to try to protect herself, not seeing that we're trying to help her. And maybe during the battle she grows more and more human, because we do see her take on a sort of humanoid form as her insanity grows. Byaku's madness was to become a predator, like the tiger, and basically hunt us. Suzaku, however, her insanity seems to be very different. She's not a hunter, but maybe she wishes to become human? I mean, would it be really sweet if it turns out that she may have had special feelings for Tenzin? A little cliche, I know, but it could happen. Besides, Tenzin in Final Fantasy XI had a very special connection with the Phoenix because of his sword. And I'm guessing that there may be some kind of really special friendship here. And also, I can't be the only one who's noticed this, but in her humanized form, Suzaku looks an awful lot like Kuja, right? That can't just be me. Anyway, moving on, it looks like we're going to be revisiting the Azim Steppe, which I'm glad, because we haven't been here since we left it after winning the Nadam. And if we're going to the burn, it makes sense that we're going to be passing through here on our way to the burn, since it is right next door to it. Anyway, we come across Sadu, and it seems like she's getting really pumped up over fighting a strong foe, and so I'm guessing that maybe Magnai and Sadu are fighting each other. Is this finally going to help Magnai find like his one true love? Or is there somebody here who really shouldn't be? All we know for sure is that we are given a few close-ups of our favorite characters in these next few shots. It seems like some trouble's going on in the meeting. Emmerich seems to be arguing a point, and he's even rising from his seat. Then we have Nanamo and Alphinaud, and then we have Y'shtola, who's clearly standing on the step. And I noticed that we seem to be seeing her a lot more in this trailer. I'm thinking that since she was missing for most of Stormblood, they're trying to make up for it now, but it seems like she is fighting somebody there. So is it Sadu or somebody else? We also have a cut of Urianger in the Rising Stones, and he's looking up. He seems to be surprised by something, so something's clearly happening here. But let's get back to the matter at hand. Magnai and Sadu are back. Excellent, but can they please stop bickering and just get married already? Really? Come on. We have Sadu shouting out, "Yes, yes, not since the Nadam has my soul burned so." Then we have Magnai yelling back, "Insolent child, you will learn your place." Like I said, we don't know who they're fighting against, we don't know what exactly is happening here. But it definitely looks like shit is about to be thrown down on the Azim Steppe. Now then, as I mentioned in the scene at the beginning of the opening, we are returning here when we see a dragon flying overhead. At first I thought that it was Race Falgar, but we are clearly standing in front of Omega before this dragon comes swooping in, because it has to be Midgardsormr. He looks so much like his children at this size. It can't be anyone else. And look, he even knows Akh-Morn. How can it be anybody else? We are given a glimpse of the background here of a giant moon/planet, and we know that Midgardsormr did come from another star that seems to have been destroyed by Omega. So I'm guessing that we're going to be getting a closer look at the world that he came from and more of why he came here. Moving on through a glimpse of the former Emperor, we see Sid, who is shaken and he's looking pretty freaked out about something. Either this is about Omega, most likely about Omega and his decision to really start to use Magitech weapons, and kind of like Nero suggested, or he's afraid of what's going to be happening to the Empire, because regardless of what he says, the Empire was still once his home. It's like it's his birthplace, it's where he comes from. So I would be shocked if he didn't feel like some kind of worry about what may be happening to it. We also get another shot of Nero, whom I'm surprised that he's up and standing so soon, and we still don't see Biggs or Wedge. So either he recovered remarkably well in a very short amount of time, or he just left his sickbed without permission. My money is on the second part. And we have a quick look at the second dungeon. And we have a giant mud pudding as one of the bosses. But that's not important right now. What is important is that here, like during the meeting, something very trippy is happening. We're back in the meeting hall in Alomigo, where it seems that the Warrior of Light is hearing a voice. But it seems as though Alize and Y'shtola are being affected by whatever is distorting the Warrior of Light's point of view. As for Xenos, if that really is him, he seems to have made a full recovery. He's back in his armor. He's strolling away from the Emperor like he's basically the king here, which makes me think that this imposter is about to go after something. or somebody. At least that's what it looks like to me. Everything that happens in the trailer next is moving by really fast, such as we have poor Alpha running through this space and we have a tear falling. This doesn't bode well for our feathered friend. More scenes of fighting with chaos, and we have Omega's eye opening up all the way, which has been shown before as almost always being half open, but now it looks like we are in the final stretch of actually fighting Omega. But that's when we find ourselves standing in the Alpha scape with Sid, and he's surrounded by falling feathers. Alpha seems to have sacrificed himself for some reason, because his feathers are like falling from the sky. Sid's holding one in his hands before it disappears. I hope not. I love Alpha. Like, he's my Choco Boy. I love him. I really do hope that they bring him back, should something happen to him. But moving on, we move back to Yestola. Like I said, she's really appearing a lot here. And while I am glad to see her a little bit more often, it makes me start to wonder if something is going to happen to her, because sooner or later they're going to have to bring up like the issue with her eyes and everything. We have her standing here in front of the house of the Crooked Coin, which is a sacred place for the Exali on the step, but why is she here? I mean, is she trying to create a portal somewhere? Like maybe this is a shortcut to the burn? I do know that the House of the Crooked Coin is where the Dothal who wish to put an end to their rebirths die for good if they don't want to be reincarnated again. But I can't help but think that maybe it's time we lose another Scion. Does that make me a terrible person? It's just that I notice at the end of expansions we seem to be losing at least one Scion. Like at the end of 1.0 we lost Louis Swan. I mean, I know that this was before the Scions was created and he didn't really die and all that stuff, but you know what I mean. And then we lose Moonbrita before the Scions fell apart at the end of 2.5. And then Papalimo sacrificed and Lise finally taking up her own name again at the end of 3.5. So technically it's like we lost both Papalimo and Ida at once, so maybe it's possible we could be losing another Scion here. But we do know that a lot of battles are going to be waiting for us in 4.4, that much we know for sure. Like during the Alpha Escape, and something big may finally happen to the Warrior of Light, because we do hear that voice at the end of the trailer saying, "That way, sorrow. History must be changed. Ahead looms light, expunging all form and life. Twin dooms only you can forestall. Only you. Throw wide the gates that we may pass. Ahead looms a calamity." So that is everything that we know for sure from the trailer. So here are my predictions as to what could be happening in the patch itself. I'm only going to be talking about the main scenario quest line, though maybe I'll do another predictions video for what I think could be coming for Omega later on, but here we go. Now I'm thinking that this patch starts off with us speaking with Alize in the Rising Stones before we're being called off to this meeting in Alamigo, where we get down to work and discuss exactly what we're going to do about this continuing threat of the Garlean Empire. Like, it's gone on long enough. And we have all of these people gathering here, and they're talking about what we think that they might be planning. Like, should we be prepared to battle again? And that's where we have like Heian and Kane Senase, which is like where the lines like from Heian and Kane Senase basically like, we're glad to be here. It's an honor to meet you all. Thank you for inviting me. Now let's get down to business and really talk about what we're going to do. Like, should we continue the march on ahead to Golemo, see what we can do there, or just hang back and wait? And this could be the perfect opportunity for Thancred to also warn everybody of what he found out while he was in the Garlean lands. And so he's telling them that possibly he learned about the ship that Alphinaud was on disappeared somewhere over the burn and nobody knows what happened. But he also mentions that everybody seems to know about the primal that was summoned in Doma, and basically it looks like fighting may break out again very soon because people are starting to panic over the thought of another primal. Which is very interesting about how word of Doma summoning a primal got back to the capital. Then again, I doubt something like eyewitness accounts and proof would stall like this fake Xenos' plans for long. I think that this whole thing was set up beforehand where Xenos, we'll just call him Xenos for the time being, set Asahi up to die. Now, Xenos knew that Asahi was his follower, like he was devoted to him. There was never any doubt that he was going to make sure that this plan worked, that he was going to summon a primal one way or another. And like we all know, he did succeed in his plans to get Yotsuyu to become a primal during the exchange, and I think that Xenos would have planned to have Asahi and the others killed on their way back to Garlemald to maybe make it look like the primal had cut them down, thus creating a deeper rift between the warring factions within Garlemald itself. And this explains a little bit more about the conversation we heard later on, about the Populares are no longer an obstacle, now it's time to bring the Empire's might to bear. Whoever says that seems to believe that the Populares aren't a threat anymore, and that the entire Empire is going to be behind the idea of war once again. Now, it sounds like the Empire is planning something big behind their walls, a new plan that could bring about an end to Eorzea once and for all. At least that's what it sounds like. And now this right here sums up the problems that are going on right now. Like, how is Varus holding down the forts? I mean, since he took the throne, it seems like the Empire is in a downward spiral. I mean, they couldn't get any information from Azys Law, and he lost the aid of one of his closest followers. He lost both Doma and Alumigo to the rebels, one after another, in a short amount of time. Primals are still being summoned left and right, and to top it off, we rebels attacked his son and heir. I can only imagine just what the people are thinking with dealing with someone like this. The position of the Garlean Emperor is almost like a divine god in their eyes, since the average Garlean doesn't believe in the 12 or icons. Which is interesting, because if the Emperor is a god in their eyes, wouldn't that make the Warrior of Lights a devil to them? Interesting. Anyway, moving on, I'm thinking that during this meeting with the other nations here, that's when this whole trippy thing happens. There's a lot of talk that the voice that we hear about, there is some talk going around that the voice we hear is actually Albert from the Warriors of Darkness. And I was under the impression that he and the other Warriors of Darkness died a second time when they returned home with Minfilia. But it could be that they're being used by the Mother Crystal to deliver a message, or even by Minfilia herself. Anyway, I'm thinking that whoever it is, they're interrupting this whole meeting by giving us a conference call with Minfilia's help, and trying to warn us that something big is coming. I can't say for sure exactly how this is happening, because it looks like Y'shtola and Alize are also being affected somewhat by whatever's distorting our point of view. Whatever the case is, I do think that this has something to do with Zodiark and the Ascians, because as we all know, a handful of Ascians are dead. We killed 2, Nabrialis and Igeon, and Thornton took care of La Habrea for us, and if you play as a summoner, then you know that you've already killed a handful of the Black Mass Ascians. Then we have the Shadow Hunter, aka Gaius, looked like he had taken down at least 2 of the Red Mass Ascians, and another handful of lower level Ascians. And so I'm guessing that the other Ascians may be starting to panic here, because they know that we know how to destroy them, and they are losing their numbers fast. And so they're not going to be holding back any longer. And maybe Minfilia found out that they are planning a big strike against the Warrior of Light, and screw this, let's just throw everything we got at these guys and create another reckoning and just bring it all down and see what happens. Maybe Minfilia knows about this, and she's trying to relay a message to us, which leads us to what is happening to the Warrior of Light during the meeting. I noticed that there are some parts during the trailer where our figures here are faded and glowing slightly, meaning that maybe we have our own soul ripped from our body, and that the filter is our character trying to communicate with other people. And that would explain Kane Senna's statements here. Reach out as I may, I could not sense in him the spark of life that is his soul. Then there's a scene where we are far more detached from the physical realm than anyone else. I think we're the only ones who are going to be able to reach this place to be able to converse with Albert or whoever it is that's talking. And by reaching, I mean that our souls left our body temporarily. That's why we have Kane Senna saying that she couldn't sense a soul within the body, as which she's talking about us while we're passed out. Kane says that she's reaching out, she's trying to send someone's soul, but it's missing. While we're away, we could be speaking with Albert again, and he warns us what's coming. The twin dooms only you can forestall. Only you. Throw wide the gates that we may pass, ahead looms a calamity. When we wake up, we tell the others of what happened. We learn that maybe we decide that we better go after Alphinaud before things get any worse. If I had to guess who this voice might be, I have to guess that it's Albert. In the Japanese voice actors, it seems that the same voice actor who did Albert is the same one who's doing the voice here. And what the voice means, I can't be completely sure, but twin dooms only you can forestall. Now that sounds like hints about a flood of light and maybe a calamity happening at the same time. So they're here trying to warn us about what Elizabeth plans to set up another calamity through a Garlean war with the rest of the world. And that seeing as we only just saved the first from a flood of light, only we can prevent twin dooms. So we have to basically put a stop to another calamity through a war. We have to prevent this world from falling into like a flood of light. I'm also thinking that we're going to be affected by this in some way. Like after we appear before Albert, maybe something happens to us, much like how Midgardsormr put a kind of walls around us before Heavenswards and kind of forced us to grow stronger. This could be the same thing. Like we have some kind of barrier around us that we have to overcome and grow stronger for the next expansion. And we have to grow stronger if we want to prevent this war from destroying the world. But if that happens, I can't help but wonder how this is going to lead into what Elidibus was saying way back in the Realm Reborn storyline, about how if we had the same understanding of things as the Ascians did, then we wouldn't have any conflict. Don't get me wrong, I don't trust Elidibus at all, but I don't think him saying such a line back then was insignificant. I think we're now at a point where the Ascians are going to be putting their plan in full swing because, like I said, they're being destroyed one by one. Like at least 5 of them have been taken out, along with like a handful of their lower servants. And I think that Garlemald is just going to be the center stage for when it kicks off. Another thing I want to mention is that I think that Alisaie is going to be pushing herself to want to become stronger. She's going to be blaming herself because she couldn't do anything to help us after we were harmed in front of her. The Warriors of Darkness did something to me, like there's some kind of wall and I don't know how to free myself from this. And she's going to be worried about her brother who, again, just disappeared. And she's just finally had enough. She can't stand seeing people she cares about being struck down, and she can't help them. So she wants to grow stronger to be able to protect them. And after all that, that's when we're really going to be heading for the step. We're ready to go after Alphinaud. We're there to bring him back home, find out what happened. And while we're there on our way to the burn, I think that Y'shtola is going to find out that the Dothal truly believe that their souls can be erased in such a way at the House of the Crooked Coin. Maybe she discovers that there's something that's affecting the soul inside that structure, and she wants to go there maybe to find some kind of cure to help us, like overcome these barriers around us. And that could provoke the conflict between Sadu and Magnai, where Magnai is going to be tired of us, or maybe Sadu casually walking around, or maybe he's just looking for a fight, really. That wouldn't surprise me. But Sadu said that her soul has never burned as bright since the Nadam, meaning that there's going to be a serious encounter waiting for us on the step. And when we finally do get to the burn, we find the remains of the airship, but since we don't find Alphinaud's body, we conclude that he may yet still be alive, and we continue on trying to find him, like discover what happened, at least until we're head off by a sandstorm and we're separated from the others and we're forced to head across the rest of the land on foot to a certain meeting place. It's here we ended up traveling deeper into the burn, and we discover the Allagan facilities, where we find out that the burn was once a place where the Allagan Empire experimented with primal summoning and sealed away here. When the Garleans come across this place, that's when they took hold of the knowledge and technology, like not only building their own empire, but accidentally unleashing primals that was sealed here and thus sucked the land dry, which led to this whole thing. Like the Emperor declared like all icons bane upon this world and must be eliminated. And I think that during all this, we also learn about Xenos and exactly what's happening inside Garlemald. We see the Shadow Hunter tell Alphinaud more about what's happening and that things are growing worse by the day. Garlemald is planning something, and this could be the opening we need to go to Garlemald and confront their plans now before things get any worse. Anyway, that's going to be it for now. Those are my thoughts, my personal predictions for what's coming for us in 4.4. Let me know what you think, and if you agree with any of my decisions, any of my guesswork, and let me know what you think. Like, what do you think is going to be coming for us? I would love to hear it. Anyway, that's it for now. Hope to see you again soon, and have a good day.